At Aretha Franklin's funeral, we see a picture of Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and former President Clinton seated near Louis Farrakhan. Why was such a controversial person seated in such a prominent place? What did it mean?
In Black funerals, we sit people the way we want to seat them. It has no political significance whatsoever.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
And I, too, would like to welcome you to the program today. We've been looking forward to this conversation. And as you've heard from two of our panelists, I would like for you to meet everyone now, and they'll tell a little bit about what they do as well as tell us what their names are. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right.
My name is Bishop Michael Olson, and I am the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
I'm Rabbi Philip Bentley, a retired rabbi living in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church, Fort Worth, Texas. Our congregation is a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
I'm Andrea Luxon. I'm president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
And I'm Othel Hawthorne Lakey, a bishop in retirement of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church residing in Beaufort, Georgia.
I'm Tony Matthews, and I serve as senior pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here today, from taking time from your schedule to join us for this important discussion today. And today we have a special person with us, Rabbi Bentley. Welcome to the program. This is your first time here at the American Religious Town Hall meeting, and we want to extend to you a very, very warm welcome, and thank you for being with us. Tell us a little bit more about where you went to school and what you're doing now. We just got a little snapshot at your introduction. Tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm originally from Chicago. I attended Shimer College, which is a great book school, followed by University of Manitoba with Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi. Some people may have heard of him. I took rabbinic training at Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in New York City. Since then, I have served pulpits in New Bedford, Massachusetts, on Long Island, in Queens, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and San Jose, Costa Rica. I've also been a Hillel director on campus, and I am a lifelong activist in human rights and in the environment and peace.
Well, thank you very much, and so glad to have you here on today's program. Let's get right to our discussion, shall we? The Allgemeiner serves as an independent media voice covering the Middle East, Israel, and matters of Jewish interest around the world. One of its correspondents, Benjamin Kirstein, wrote an article that addressed Jewish leaders' disapproval over the prominent attendance of the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan at the legendary singer Aretha Franklin's funeral. In addition, Harvard Law professor emeritus Alan Dershowitz expressed disappointment with former President Bill Clinton's appearance alongside Farrakhan and Dershowitz, complained that some on the left, including the dominant media, practice an affirmative action for bigotry, quote unquote, in avoiding criticism of prominent blacks who openly express bigoted views. He says, I think some people think that there is an affirmative action program, and the standard for criticizing black bigots is somewhat different than the standard for criticizing white bigots. That's unacceptable. You can't have affirmative action for bigotry in this country, close quote. Abraham Cooper of the Simon Wiesenthal Center said in a statement to the Allgemeiner, Like millions of other Americans who grew up listening to Aretha Franklin's amazing voice, I was saddened by her passing, putting Louis Farrakhan in a seat of honor in the first row on stage near President Clinton, and amidst a generation of African American political and religious leaders was equally saddening, close quote. We're asking our panelists today to consider the following questions. First of all, in addition to strengthening the relationship between Jews and African Americans, what can the religious community do to foster racial harmony among all races and ethnic groups? The second question, if Dershowitz's theory of affirmative action for bigotry is true, what can be done to reverse it? And then finally, what words or actions from Christ himself can be used to highlight the importance of racial harmony? Well, that is our subject for today. And again, welcome to everyone on the panel. Let's go back to those who made the opening comments. And for that, we go back to Rabbi Bentley. You helped to start the program. Tell us more of your thoughts on this subject. You raised the question is, how did it come to be that those figures are on the platform at Aretha Franklin's funeral?
I did some research and tried to find out, but I really assumed exactly what we've heard, which is that funerals, when they are conducted and they are public and somebody of importance, that where people are seated is a matter of protocol within the community. I don't see it as having anything to do with politics. And I know that Aretha Franklin did have, Louis Farrakhan had some influence in her life. He is an anti-Semite. I'm not a fan, and to put it mildly, but I do acknowledge the fact that he created or leads a movement, the Nation of Islam, which, although it is racist and anti-Semitic, from his point of view, it isn't necessarily from others. I am frequently in Harlem visiting one of my sons who lives there, and I've asked them about it, and they said, no, the people you see around here are not representative of those thoughts.
All right, thank you very much. Now let's go to Bishop Lakey.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the program.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yes, your thoughts, please.
There's a lot in this statement that arouses my, to put it politely, outrage. I think one thing that stands out, the concern by Alan Dershowitz is that he's concerned that they put him near President Clinton. Now, it's okay, it seems, if Louis Farrakhan is next to Al Sharpton or next to Jesse Jackson. But to put him next to this white boy, that's ridiculous. And for someone with the stature of Alan Dershowitz or whoever it was, who said that that the protocol was off because this Louis Farrakhan was sitting at a funeral near President Clinton, is saddening. That's outrageous to say that. The second thing I want to say is that we, and I hope my brother Matthews will agree, we in the black community, when we have a funeral, we have a funeral. We don't set up any political protocol. We don't set up a political agenda. When folks show up, we cry, we moan, we sing, we shout. We go to a cemetery, we bury folks, and then we go back to what we were doing before we got there. So this whole idea that we're going to follow the white standard in how we handle funerals, we don't do that. And I was very upset that some folk outside going to come in and tell us where we sit when we celebrate Aretha Franklin's death.
All right, thank you, Bishop Lakey. And since you called out the name of Dr. Matthews, you did. And so we're going to go down to the other end of the table. And what is your take on this issue?
This is already a great, exciting, spirit-filled topic and discussion. And to concur with Bishop Lakey, he's correct. In the African-American community, when it comes to funerals, in particular, funerals of prominent people like Aretha Franklin, there's not really a protocol. And although a lot of African-American Christians disagree with Louis Farrakhan's theology, and we also disagree with his anti-Semitic statements and all of the perceived or in reality hatred and racism there, Most African Americans believe in their heart that Louis Farrakhan loves Black people. And at the end of the day, be it right or wrong, that's what matters. And so at a funeral, and let me say also, I have something in common with Aretha Franklin, by the way. Of course, she was much older than I am, but she grew up on the same street, lived there for a while in Buffalo, New York on Glenwood Avenue. So a shout out to Glenwood Avenue in Buffalo, New York. I was raised on the same street for about 5 years. We lost an icon in Aretha Franklin. I'm so happy that we can discuss this topic, and I'm looking to further the discussion on how we can, as African American and Jews and beyond, have some racial reconciliation and harmony among our people.
So Ms. Franklin had a variety of friends and people who she appreciated and influenced her, perhaps. Yes. And so what you're saying, Bishop Lakey, again, is they can have whoever they want to on the platform. It's not about politics. It's about a funeral service.
It's a funeral service.
All right, thank you. And then Reverend Plumley, your comments, please.
Thank you. I don't want anybody to get away from here thinking that that white folks do funerals that much differently from black folks, at least in terms of seating protocols. I have never is a long time now. Let me. Right. I've done a lot of funerals. I do not think I've ever had anyone seated in a particular place of prominence except family, the family of the deceased. And pallbearers, they have a special place to sit, but nobody else does. I did a wedding where the First Lady of the United States, not this one, but one previous, First Lady of the United States was present, and her daughters, and she sat kind of close to the back. Came in, and the Secret Service were all around. There was no seating protocol. Sometimes people have to go out of their way to find to get their feelings hurt. Now that said, I think that we cannot just quickly brush aside the notions that anti-Semitism is alive and well, because in Pittsburgh, with the attack on the synagogue there, we saw lived out in great tragedy and horror the reality of the continuing anti-Semitic thoughts and feelings of not an insignificant number of people, and the way that got lived out in just absolutely evil behavior. So we can talk about anti-Semitism, but not about seating at somebody's funeral.
All right, thank you. And now, Dr. Luxton, welcome back to the program. Your thoughts on the subject, please.
Thank you. I mean, at a base level, I would say there's just way too much hatred around, way too much hatred in this country, whether it's against Jews or against African Americans or against women or whatever it is. There's a lot that's going on that is problematic. And I think we should be calling all that out. We absolutely should be calling all that out. However, having said that, I think sometimes the things that could pull us together are things like funerals. This is where we should all be on the same page. And I think we can read things into other events that are going on, or we can take one person who says some things that we do not agree with, that are wrong as far as we're concerned, that are even hatred as far as we're concerned, and then we attach something to that individual. So in no situation where they are they okay? And that's a problem. We move away then from the issue to the person, and we start villainizing the person. And when we start vilifying people, I think we get into a situation where it's very, very hard for us to bridge things. I mean, recently, we had the death of the black congregants in a church. We had the death of Jews in a mosque recently. We have, in the synagogue recently, we have attacks on mosques. Those are type of things that should bring us together in solidarity against hatred and towards being more unified on the issues that really count. Instead of separating on issues and people.
Okay, thank you very much. Bishop Olson, welcome back to the program. Your thoughts on the subject, please.
They're still very fluid. I think it's just interesting. The imagery is. I thought the funeral, of Aretha Franklin was about Aretha Franklin, and I think that's sort of what funerals are, for thanksgiving for her life and grief for her passing, and it's a focus on that. My mind also went back to John Paul II's funeral, which is just 13, 14 years ago. And you had the Prime Minister of Israel seated next to the President of Iran. And the focus wasn't on that. I think it was poignant because it was a shared common human experience that death comes for every one of us. And I think that that's a commentary perhaps on the shift of our way of living in this country in the last 10 years, where there's so much ideology, and it's really fomented by social media and by really anarchy that wants to tear us apart as human beings. And that goes all the way across. I was thinking the four figures who were seated there, depending upon the ideologue, they could have criticized each and every one of them for their presence, for various other things, for public shortcomings that they have in their lives. And is that really where we want to live as human beings? And is that how we want to mark in gratitude the death of the passing, rather, of a woman like Aretha Franklin and her art? I would hope not.
So I'm hearing the panelists, I'm hearing a consensus, at least to the point of, are funerals to be the great equalizer when it comes to differences of opinions and ideologies, and to focus upon why you're there for the individual, to memorialize, to celebrate, however the family or friends want to describe what is happening in the service? Is that what I'm hearing? I think I'm hearing that. Yeah,
Yes,
Bishop
basically
Blakey.
so. Of course, I would use the word transcendent. A funeral ought
to go above and beyond, where-
transcends these differences that we have. And I was glad to see that at that funeral. But let me drill down on what Dr. Matthews says. I don't know anyone in the black community other than persons in the Nation of Islam who agree with the theology or political positions of Minister Farrakhan. That's his thing. He does it. And one mistake we make or might be making is bringing it out when it's not relevant to the discussion. Yes, his theology is, in a sense, I don't mean in a new sense, but in his sense, a different kind of anti-Semitism, if you read his stuff. We don't agree with it, but we don't appreciate equating the black community, especially the religious community, with the ideology of Nation of Islam.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few in line here. Rabbi Bentley.
Yes,
your thoughts.
it occurs to me, I wonder how comfortable Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton were sitting next to Louis Farrakhan. They might not have been all that comfortable for exactly the reasons you mentioned. And I want to say, I met both Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton at a program at the Apollo, which was about Black-Jewish relations. And despite there was some controversy about Jesse Jackson many decades ago, these men, I don't believe either of them are favorable toward Louis Farrakhan's ideology.
No, may I just say this? Oh, no.
Go ahead. You a couple of seconds?
No,
Okay,
Dr.
Dr.
Matthews.
Matthews.
I always encourage people to communicate like we're doing now, because once we move the conversation down the road, we always discover that we have more in common than not. I have a picture here, and I don't know if they can get a tight shot of this. This is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is shaking the hand of Rabbi Max Nussbaum. And real quickly, the article talks about how both blacks and Jews have known Egypt, she writes. Jews have known it as certain death. Blacks have known it as death and terror by bondage. And then she further writes that the plight of blacks and the blacks recognize this. Jewish newspapers early in the 20th century compared the black movement out of the South to the exodus of Egypt, noted that both blacks and Jews lived in ghettos and described anti-black riots in South as awful.
Let's turn that around again. I think Cameron
So
wanted to get a tight shot on that.
this is if we can get back to having conversations and bringing our communities together, it would just do the nation so well. We have to. I would love to get to know the rabbi. He's an important person. I like to get to know him, and if we could just do this among other races and ethnic groups, I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you. Bishop Blakey, you've got 20 seconds.
Well, I was just going to say I'm one of the few who've had the privilege of being invited to dinner with Minister Louis Farrakhan at his own table. He's a very cordial, welcoming person. Though we had good discussions, we disagreed vehemently over his points of view. So that's the way we do it in the black community. We do not vilify people, even though we disagree with them very violently sometimes.
All right, thank you very much. That has to be the last word for this segment. Thank you so far for the discussion. There's an important announcement I'd like for you to stand by to listen to. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome back. Glad you stood by for our summations. Before we go there, I too would like to encourage you to go to the website. You can find programs that are archived there from past experiences we've had here on the Town Hall. And then also learn more about the Town Hall Estates, a very fine organization I know that you want to get close to and understand more about. Now let's go to our summation. Let's begin with Bishop Olson. You're first.
Funerals are an opportunity to celebrate a person's life and passing and to give comfort and solace to those who are closest to the person who's passed away. In the face of death and the eternal political arguments, no matter how important in this world, have to be viewed against that horizon.
All right, thank you. Now, Reverend Plumley, your summation, please.
Thank you. What passes today for communal conversation often can be characterized as searching for a zinger. I know I'm guilty of it, and I hear people around me doing it all the time. I think that's what we have here in these words from Alan Dershowitz, where he says the standard of criticizing black bigots is somewhat different than the standard of criticizing white bigots, and he finds that unacceptable. Well, of course it's unacceptable. The issue, however, is that mostly we ignore bigots until we get to the place where we simply have to deal with them. But if you'll pay any attention to what's going on, most bigots are simply ignored.
Thank you. Bishop Blakey, your summation, please.
Thank you. It seems to me that opportunities to heal ought not be criticized and used as opportunities to divide. Aretha Franklin's funeral, to me, transcended many of our differences, if only for a moment. But for Alan Dershowitz and others to come back and decide that this was a political moment does all of us harm.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Matthews,
And
your summation.
I'd like to close with addressing the one of the questions the moderator had. What words or actions of Christ himself can be used to highlight the importance of racial harmony? John 4:4, Jesus had to go through Samaria. He dealt with the Syrophoenician woman in Mark 7. The Great Commission talks about spreading the word to all nations. The post-resurrection commission in Acts 1 and 8 brings all people together. And even from a theological perspective, we are all made in the image of God, and that is very crucial. And we have a common ancestry that's embedded in the Word of God. And so we're hoping that racial reconciliation can just fly and soar in America.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Luxton, your summation.
You know, there's so much that can bring us together and should bring us together. But I think we have media, or those who choose to use media, that gain far more by being divisive. And I think sometimes we have to be very proactive in not accepting what media tries to push on us, because they're going to push divisiveness, they're going to push difference, they're going to push individuals that they think are problems, and they're going to push it out there to cause problems because that's what sells news. And I think the only thing we can do is say we're not willing to do that. We have got to look at what brings us together, which there is much, and try and sell that as news rather than accept the negative news.
All right, thank you very much. And then Rabbi Bentley, again, thank you for being here today, and welcome. Your summation now, please.
I also, this may surprise you, want to go to that question about what Jesus in the Gospels said. And two examples come very quickly to mind. One is the story, the parable of the Good Samaritan. Samaritans and Jews had been at each other for hundreds of years. That's a long story, of course. And he sets up the Samaritan as, as the good guy. The other thing is, that when Jesus asks, what's the most important verse? And a good Jew that he was, he said, "V'ahavta re'echa kamocha," you shall love your fellow as yourself, which Martin Buber translated as, you shall love your fellow, he is like you. Hebrew can do that. The basis of our faiths transcends race, it transcends all other nation, all other considerations. We all are one human family, and we should all recognize each other as such.
Thank you very much. This has been a very enlightening, insightful discussion around this table. We do appreciate your being here today and look forward to your coming back next time. But for now, the charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And so now, friends, until next week at the same time and over this very same channel, or perhaps you tuned in today via your computer or device, we're glad you came. But for now, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.